Fixed bayonets, comrades. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid every Saturday, noon to 1. Today we're going 2 hours though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, noon to 2 today. WRMN, 1410 AM, Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Studio number here is 847-931-1410. And we have a text number of 505-926-1410. Or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube live channel. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little tired. I got a little bit obsessive compulsive about my garage. And for the last couple days, I've been deep inside the garage clearing as much stuff out as I can. So the garbage men will not be happy when they come by. So
well, it's a good time to do it.
I know, the weather was nice.
Yeah. I've been checking my garden. I don't think I'm going to be planting any vegetables anymore this year. I got some flowers and some other stuff, and I'm thinking about putting a couple of bushes in, but that's about it. I trimmed some trees and some other stuff. So, you know, typical spring stuff.
Yeah, it's still kind of early spring. I mean, we're not even all the way through April yet. And yeah, I've been looking at my beehives, hoping to see bees coming in and out, but nothing yet. So I'm dreading opening those up because it might be sad. Then I'm going to have to order. Then I'm going to have to order new bees. But I wouldn't feel too bad because even the guys that do it, I don't know, they call them industrial beef. I don't know if you're a bee farmer. I know
commercial guys, the commercial bee guys.
Yeah, commercial bee guys. Yeah, they lose 62% of their hives.
Really?
62%. So I guess they're constantly splitting them, you know. And some of these guys know how to raise new queens. So
nice.
That's the thing. If you get queens, you could reestablish the hives every year. So that's extremely important. Those guys are actually doing God's work. When someone says God's work, those guys that are raising the queen bees, you know, to distribute them to all the other hobbyist beekeepers out there. And sometimes those bees escape and go feral, and they just continue on. So last week, we were talking a little bit about dates, important dates, and how that affects stuff. And I was doing some research, and, you know, things you could just you cast a really, really wide net, or you can narrow your search. And it's just too much out there on things. So I narrowed my search down to like 1 week in April.
Okay.
And that was like from our last show. And I think the question came up, and what today is extremely famous for is the start of the Revolutionary War.
That's what we talked about last week. Today's the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and it's an even older anniversary than the Army or the Marine Corps. I think the Army came in July, and I think the Marine Corps was November. So it's the war started actually with all volunteers, I guess, from the beginning.
That's the militia, which dates itself back to the 1600s.
Correct.
So, yeah, and as part of that, there used to be a law requiring every able-bodied man, I guess, between the age of 16 and 50-something, to own a rifle and to have like 12 rounds, something like 12 rounds of ammunition available. So that was something that was by law back then, when it was all frontier. So,
well, don't forget that was lead ball with powder and flintlock. So that, you know, the lead ball, I mean, you know, people used to find their old shot up bullets and recast them. They used to melt the lead and pour it. So, you know, lead was an important commodity back then and quite expensive, you know?
Yeah, not a lot of people were mining, you know, you didn't have a lot of mines set up at that time. They probably imported it, but yeah, recycling that stuff became very important. And you had to have a lot greater hands-on skill sets to survive back then. I mean, today, how many, if all the ammunition ran out, who would know where to mine the proper chemicals to make black powder? And who would know where to obtain lead to melt it down and flint to operate a flintlock? If all the manufacturing went away, you would be very hard pressed to continue on unless you had those skill sets. There are people out there, but not a lot. So the other importance of this date, the April 19th, and you would think that tomorrow would be more important, even though tomorrow is Easter, but Easter is not on the same day every year because it follows a lunar schedule as opposed to a calendar schedule. But the one thing, the April 20th, a rather famous, infamous person was born, and they're always talking about how that is going to be a date you have to watch because of white supremacists or white supremacy or something like that, where what I really found was the day before, again, the Lexington and Concord, you had the most important thing was the Waco. All right. So you had
and that was on the 19th.
Yeah, the 19th. Now you have the siege ending at Waco, although the siege begun much earlier. All right.
That's right, about 60 days earlier or so, maybe a little more.
For some reason, on the 19th, they chose to storm it. Now, I'm not going to believe, I'm sorry, you put on my tinfoil hat on me or whatever, but I'm not going to believe the government's story on what actually happened there. There's two sides of the story, and the other people telling the sides can't tell their side. All right. So they said that the people there started a fire. The people under siege started a fire, and that is when they decided to go in, but they fired in tear gas canisters, which are pyrotechnics. All right, so they could set fire. If you hit something, propane, you hit ammunition, you hit dry tinder, that could set it off easily. All right, so two sides on that one. And then later on, 2 years later, what do we have on the 19th?
We had the Morrow bombing.
Yeah, the Oklahoma
Federal Building bombing.
The Oklahoma Federal Building bombing. And that could be directly attributed to the Waco. All right? I don't think they interviewed the guy and he says, well, I was declaring my independence because that's the same day we fired on the British, and I consider, the U.S. government to be as tyrannical as the British was back then. But I think that comes right back to the Waco siege, and I think Waco is going to have more of an impact in our country here domestically than the birth date of a certain person who I won't name. All right, rather than his birth date. The Waco siege has everything else. And then later on, even throwing more on this, and like I says, I never believed the government's fictional accounts of these things. I haven't been a Chicago police detective. I became a rather good fiction writer. Now, I'm not saying I didn't lie on any of my reports. That's absolutely, that isn't a good thing to do, all right? But people tell you lies, and when you interview them, you take the stuff down. And that's what I mean about a fiction writer, because you're writing their fiction down, and you're discovering. But you had the Columbine shooting over there in Colorado. That was on the 19th. So now
that's true.
So if I was thinking of these, now I'm thinking of these domestic terrorist attacks, I got to link that date. Why did they choose that date? All right. Well, and it's got to come back to me because these guys, they get up in there and other than Ruby Ridge, the most one in recent memory that's had the most people dead has been Waco. And on top of Waco, you had 4 federal agents killed and over 20 of them wounded, plus other injuries. All right. So that has significance for them because they would like to go out in a blaze of glory and take out some federal agents with them or some police officers with them. So yeah, so that one date there, the April 19th, that's a date to keep an eye on. The whole week, I mean, we got Lincoln shot on the 15th, all right? And here comes some conspiracy theorists, right? So Lincoln centralized a lot of federal power, all right? So you had a republic, but under Lincoln, being a Republican still, strong leadership, had the Civil War involved there, was able to centralize a lot of federal power. On top of that, and later on, April 15th, the Titanic goes down. And the big conspiracies on that were that everyone that opposed a Federal Reserve for money, everyone that mattered was on that ship, and everyone that wanted to be canceled their tickets and stayed home. So it's like, what did they know and when did they know it and what happened? So there's a date for you. Lincoln shot and the Titanic goes down, and all of a sudden we have a centrally controlled federal currency. So it just goes on. And April's pretty bad. Like Ruby Ridge was April 21st. That's 2 days later from Waco, and one day after. Going back, there's another April one on the 27th. This one's interesting. I researched down on this one, and I was wondering, man, if this hits on April 19th, that's really something. But it was April 27th, the Republic of Texas, all right? There's a group, I didn't write down the guy's name, but the group called the Republic of Texas they wanted independence, and they claimed that Texas was illegally annexed, all right? So a fringe group, they decided that they were going to kidnap 2 people and have a standoff for a while. Then, so that went from April 27th to the 4th of May. That was 1997, and Waco was 1995. Waco was 93, Oklahoma was 95. So I went back in Texas there to see why did this guy do this in April? And Texas was next on the 29th of December, and it came in on the it declared its independence from Mexico, though, on March 2nd. So 29th of December, it was annexed into U.S. So that doesn't really jive with that date for being significant. So,
the 21st is also unique too, because that's the declaration of the Spanish-American War in 1898 too.
Yeah, okay, yeah, April 25th, 1898. And you got to look at, I was directing my own research on this, on how it would be like a terrorist act against the United States, how we should keep an eye, not only terrorist against in the United States, but also militarily overseas. The significance of these dates, why do you have to keep this in mind when you're planning an operation? And being in psychological operations, you learn about this. But I don't think a lot of people didn't take into account. I took a lot of operations courses, and when you do an operation, you take a lot of things into account. Moonlight, the amount of time you have, the weather, the terrain, everything else. But then you got to look at other psychological operations. Like if you were trying to win the hearts and minds of the people, and you decided to carry out a major attack on one of their solemn holidays where you're not supposed to kill anyone or anything, all right? That would be bad. That would go back on you. So you take those things into consideration. And for the United States, when we had the Spanish-American War there, I think it more, I don't think we have to worry about Spain so much, but I think that would be a significant date for the Cubans or the Filipinos. Right, Paul?
Exactly.
So we have,
and for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico too.
yes, so that's, so we have troops in Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. We have, Puerto Rico has its own National Guard, which is part of the U.S. military. They are a protectorate. The Philippines are no longer a protectorate of the United States. They're their own independent country, but we do have troops over there. All right, so that is a date. When that date rolls around, the 25th, the commanders of these bases should be aware of that this is a significant date, and that, you should have the, full situational awareness, but sometimes 100% situational awareness, but sometimes you need 110% situational awareness, which is, I love that fallacy because you can never have more than 100%. It's all or nothing, right? But you can increase your standard, put extra guards on the base or something. Yeah, then, so how would that, I'm looking back at a date that now becomes significant. Plus, all right, so look at our holidays, right? We got Easter tomorrow. And Orthodox and Roman Catholic and the rest of the Protestant faith follows the Roman Catholic calendar for Easter, whereas the Orthodox is sometimes on a different week, but this time it falls on the same day. So we have Easter, very solemn. Wait, maybe they all fall. Maybe it's only Christmas that does that. All right. So am I wrong, Paul? Does Orthodox Easter always fall on the same day as Roman Catholic Easter?
I think they might sometimes be later. I'm not sure.
All right. Anyways, that's a very significant date, right? We're celebrating peace, love, worldly love, and everything else, and no one is on alert. No one is on alert for this. You're going to meet your families. You're coming out of church all refreshed with love for your fellow man and everything, and concentration of people, right? That's scary to me. Big, large concentration of people. That's a date. That's a date right there that you should be on the top of your toes, looking around, head on a swivel, everything else. And I hope I hope our government that we pay to protect us and our freedoms is doing the same thing. The counterposition to that is, if you are a terrorist organization or one of our foreign adversaries or one of our competitors, and you decided to make an attack on the United States on Easter, how do you think that would affect the public, the U.S. public versus your country or your association? Paul?
Well, it'd make it'd cause extreme agitation, frustration, and anger in your population if like a religious holiday was the target of an attack, and they would I think respond in a very in a very hyper manner to that, or they would be demanding certain reactions that you might not demand at a certain other time. So I mean that's understandable, but also the attackers would do that to cause fear and terror as a terrorist into the general population. So that's why they would in fact target a date like that, and then they would want the people to be frustrated with their own government and cause division and division and acrimony between your own people.
Yeah, that's the goal of terrorism. And if you're, it's when we call them non-state
Non-state
entities.
actors. Yeah.
Actors, non-state actors. All right. So if you have a state actor, we always use in war games, we always use these imaginary countries because we don't want to mention the names. But if you look at the geography, you pretty much guess who it is. Right. But these non-state actors or the state actors, if they go after us like that, they know we're going to come with a sledgehammer because we can take it right back to them. All right. But they can kind of fight back. The non-state actors are spread out so much. You have cells of them, right? You have cells. So, you have some people living in one country, some in another, some in the country we're at here, some over there. They're spread out. It's a little harder to get the net. The net's too far. But if you can trace their support, they have to get their support from somewhere. You trace the support back to the state actor, right, that's supporting them, and you have enough righteous indignation, the righteous indignation from the U.S. populace, we're going to take that state actor out. All right, so they realize that.
That's why we no longer hear of our arch enemy, the nation of Fredonia.
Fredonia. Yeah. So they're aware of these states too, and they got to pick and choose them, right? It's just, there's 365 days plus one every 4 years, 366 every 4 years. And that is, did I skip right out past the commercial?
No, you're good.
I'm good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they, 300, every day has significance somewhere. Every day has significance somewhere. So if you're going to travel outside of the country, Google, the country you're traveling to, and then put significant historical dates for that country, and see if they have any beef with the United States during those dates, and try to go on dates that they don't have a beef with us. All right, we're coming up to commercial break now. I'm going to gather my thoughts. They're bouncing all inside my head. And we'll see you when we get back. 926-1410. Or you could hit us up on the Facebook Live, the YouTube Live channel with the comments. So I see we got some comments here. From Clyde 50, Dennis from Cleveland. Cleveland Dennis, how you doing? Yeah, no, that's one of the main things is maintaining the temperature. That's all the winter bees do is they all the winter bees do is keep the queen warm and keep the queen alive. So they should have plenty of food, and just keeping the hive itself warm doesn't necessarily mean that the bees are going to survive, because they have things like they're stuck inside all the time, and there's the Verona mites that go after them. So
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do bees bee and do bears bear?
Bees all the time. They just be bees.
Bees be being.
Bees be being. And then, hey, Brendan, thanks for listening. I see you up here on the YouTube chat also, and I could scroll down now to keep up with it. And then we got, I don't know what the number is, but there's a Google Voice. Is that the same call-in number?
No, so they just left a message.
Okay.
Maybe not particular for this show, but
probably not for this show. Yeah. All right. So Paul, what's your favorite date of significance?
Of all the dates,
Yeah, the order of precedence. Give me a couple.
you know, I don't know. I think that I like June, you know, and I like June for a couple of different reasons. You know, it's beginning to be summer. You know, the longest day. There's a lot of historical significance in June. You know, June 6th, D-Day. June 28th is the day that you know, considered to be actually the start of World War I, but it's actually 1 month later, I believe. And I kind of like June. You know, June 14th is Flag Day. You know, and then that leads up to July. You know, and you know, of course, I like the 4th of July. Not only is it a significant day for me, it's a significant day for our country. So I kind of like June. June's a really good month. I like. So those are that's kind of cool. You know, I mean, you have a lot of things in June. Actually, you have the Korean War started on June the 25th, and you know, like I said, the Archduke Ferdinand, and then you know the in 1941 the Air Corps became the Army Air Forces, and then
yeah.
you know, I mean, June, I like June. You know, I mean, I like June, and I like the fact that it's summer, and I like the fact that it's Flag Day. It's a day that we all could demonstrate our patriotism besides the 4th of July and besides Labor Day and besides, you know, Remembrance Day or Veterans Day. So I like that. I like June. June's a good time.
So like June 6th, all right, June 6th, 1944, D-Day, the day we went in to retake Europe. And a lot of that was based on weather, the tides, and everything else. But significant, I saw some significance there was when the date is really close to when they pulled everyone off Dunkirk. All right, so there was Dunkirk Peninsula was like a week before that. And I think the Germans may have been on alert. If I was a German intelligence officer, you know, I would say that's going to be a significant date. If they're getting ready for an invasion, that would be the day I would do it, because that would, if they had a successful invasion, right? Just looking at the legacy and the psyops on this, if they have a massive successful invasion on the same day that the French, British troops were pulled off the beaches at Dunkirk, that would kind of erase the failure at Dunkirk for a while. It would overwhelm that date. But now it was a different date, so Dunkirk, I'm trying to, my notes are all iffy on this and everything, all over the place. But yeah, so that June 6th, you're looking at something, June 14th, all right? There's an interesting one where I think I can make the connection. They had another group, anti-government. I'm not saying anti-American groups on these. I think they're more anti-government because the government isn't the country. The country isn't the government right now.
Dunkirk was June the 4th, 1940.
So that was the last day, but they started pulling them off the beaches in May. Right?
May 26th.
Yeah, May 26th. So, you would think that they would love to have landed on June 4th, but it was delayed. You watch the movie The Longest Day, and everyone's waiting to go, but, the weather was so bad. So I'm thinking that there was the actual invasion, they were shooting for June 4th. But I don't think anyone's alive in the planning sessions that could tell me now, because it's been more than 50 years, so I'm sure that stuff's declassified. But the Montana Freemen, they went off, I didn't write down the date. It's recent history, though. The Montana Freemen had a standoff with the federal government also, and that went from March 25th, and then they decided to surrender on June 14th, which is Flag Day. And I think it's also the Army's birthday. But, you know, if you're going to pick a day, if you're in a, I would call a hyper patriotic group, all right, and you were going to surrender because you're outnumbered, you're outgunned, you know, you would pick a significant date for that, and I think Flag Day is a good day. So so June 14th, people are out and about again. All right, people, at least we still do it. All right, in Schiller Park, I live just off of Schiller Park. I still live in Chicago, but I live just off of Schiller Park. But I belong to the Knights of Columbus in Schiller Park, and I also belong to American Legion there. And when they had a scout troop in Schiller Park, they would do a flag retirement ceremony. That scout troop moved over to Park Ridge, and they still do it. They come into our clock tower park in Schiller Park. It's right off Irving. You know, it'd be about it's across the street from Village Hall and everything. So the every June 14th we have a flag retirement ceremony, and it's a little educational because teaches you how a flag's supposed to be properly disposed of. The kids get to show some honor for the flag. Our Legion group shows up, and some of the Knights of Columbus show up because patriotism. And so we gather, and there's also a lot of gathering, and the gathering of people, you know, are more patriotic, you know, more pro America as a country. You don't have to say they're pro-government in any way, but as a country, as a group of people, you know, you love your country, you love your people, and you're gathered in a group there, and that does make you a target. So, you know, you have to keep your eyes open. You have to be aware, not so much paranoid, you know, but I would think that the police departments and the federal government, whose job is to protect us, protect the borders, to protect us from terrorism, using their resources, could identify that. One of the interesting things going down the rabbit hole, and I learned this from the National Institute for Health, all right? And we were talking before about artificial intelligence, okay? And one of the things it's really great for, artificial intelligence, is going through a bunch of data that all seems irrelevant. You know, nothing matches up. You see, why would this affect this? Why would this affect that? Why would this affect this? All right. So they take significant terrorist activities, maybe not terrorists, but demonstrations, terrorist acts, violent acts, school shootings, you know, protests, everything. And they went and they got all the data from all this, and they threw it in, and now they have artificial intelligence going through and seeing what factor temperature has, what factor previous news stories has, what factor weather has, and everything. And they put that together, and they're hoping to get a artificial intelligence answer that, hey, this is the most likely spot for a terrorist act. This is all the perfect storm. This is the perfect storm. You know, now we got better weather, right? They could tell you, hey, tornadoes are possibly coming through. You know, they could tell you, you know, next week we're going to have thunderstorms. Like who was able to tell that to that clarity, right? So they're hoping that artificial intelligence will be able to do that. The only trouble I got to say about that is random. You know, you can't, hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully you could beat the House. I mean, you would think that if you had artificial intelligence that good, you could go in and track all the numbers of the lottery and be able to tell exactly which numbers to buy and where to buy it to hit the lottery. And then the lottery no longer becomes random. And so you're looking at to hit this target where you're going to have an attack. So one of the things you have to take into account also is the significance of the date, because that's going to raise your likelihood of an attack. So one of the in Afghanistan, I had a colonel scream at me that he wanted to know where exactly the next IED was going off, and I'm like, dude, I can't tell you that. If I knew that, don't you think I would be telling everyone? I'd be screaming it. I'd be like, no, it's good, no. You can't. It says, I need data, and then I could give you a best guess. But your people aren't giving me the data, so I have nothing to go by. But now they're collecting as much data as they can, significant or not. So you get a lot of video surveillance, drones and everything, right? Drones, they don't know what they're looking at. Most of the time, a human being is directing them. But even a human being doesn't see everything that the drone sees. But the drone doesn't know what to do with that. It's being directed by a human being, all right? It has no brain to scout out for itself. Some of them are slightly autonomous and will find the biggest piece of steel in the area or a heat signature and go after a heat signature. But really, they're missing everything in the background. Now they take all this video. You could take all this video and have another thing, the artificial intelligence, a computer go through it looking for just one key thing. And the computers don't get bored, and they do it rapidly, looking for one thing, and they spot this stuff. Then it's got to go to a human to figure it out. Again, when they have this stuff, it's got to go to a human to figure it out. And here's the thing, right? If you hide all this data that you're collected, you hide all the information you collect, and you say, and you don't give it out, what good is it? What's the funny thing we hear about all these mass shooters?
They knew about them.
They knew about them. Who did they tell? Nobody. Hey, they could tell the local police, keep an eye on this guy. He's going to do something. You know? They don't even listen to the local police when the local police says, hey, this guy's doing something. They're like, no, he's not. I'm like, we're supposed to tell you when he's doing something. Yeah, that, I think I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent here.
You know, if anybody could do predictive policing, that would be like fantastic. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Well, I could do predictive policing on a broad level. On a broad level. Yeah, you eye-bind that guy, he's going to commit that crime again.
You know, I was doing a firearms class about 7, 8 years ago, and I made a reference to, next time you're walking down, pick a street. So I'll just pick Avenue Q, right? And a guy took offense with that. He goes, why are you always saying something about where I live or something like that, right? And then there was a 2-day class, and that night, there was a major shooting on Avenue Q, and the guy came in the next day. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I thought you were being funny. I said, no. I said, I wasn't being funny, but he said, you know any other shootings? Because I'll stay away from them. But yeah, anything could happen, and you could be right once or twice. You could be like a clock. You're right twice a day.
A broken clock, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a working clock can be 5 minutes off and never right.
Right.
But at least a broken clock is exactly correct twice a day.
Right.
Unless it's a 24-hour clock like in Russia.
Yeah.
In the Eastern Bloc. Yeah, anyone else out there know of any significant dates out there that you think are significant? I mean, every day you go out there, but when it becomes okay, so here's a historical date, September 11th. Why was that date picked for the terrorists? 9/11. Yeah.
That's the phone number you call when you need help.
Yes. That 911, okay, that has a significant date. You put the numbers there. Okay, we got a call. And
Hi, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's Cleveland Dennis.
Hi, Cleveland Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. Yeah, hi. You know, you guys cover so much so fast. I just want to relate to a couple things. I know I text some of it across, but I'm out here sitting in my front yard listening to the motorcycle races on Randall Road and listening to you guys. But I happened to listen at about 5 or 6 a.m. this morning, one of my back issues of True Crime Garage, and they featured those battles like you talked about, Waco and over in Idaho, and then they told the story. This is the one I listened to of the OKC bombing. Okay,
the Oklahoma bombing, yes.
Yeah, I remember when it happened, and I was working my tail back and forth to the airport 5-6 days a week, but they told a significant number of sorts. I relate to none because there's so many things that happen in 365 days, and when you get to be my age, a lot more things. But they said Jesus died when he was 33. The guy that did the first attempt at a federal building bombing, whether he did it or not as far as actual bombing, but they were planning it, but he got executed when he was 33. The guy Snell from Arkansas, who Timothy McVeigh kind of patterned himself after, and I think McVeigh, when he was executed, was 33 as well. Somehow they brought that together as significant, and I looked at it as almost random. I don't know.
It could be. You can make connections on a lot of stuff. You know, like the old joke goes, "Why are fire engines red?" I'll tell you. Because 2 + 2 is 4. 4 × 3 is 12. There are 12 inches in a ruler. Queen Elizabeth was a ruler. Queen Elizabeth was the name of a ship. Ships sail on the seas. The fish live in the seas. Fish have fins. The Finns fought the Russians. Fire engines are red because they're always rushing around.
There you go. I got it. I stayed overnight.
It's like
I stayed overnight at the Queen Elizabeth in Long Beach.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
so you can make connections, but when you start making more than one connection, it's what did they make us stop doing? Profiling, right? Profiling. That's what military intelligence is, right? It's profiling. You're profiling everything. You're looking for significance in something, all right? You're looking for what we used to call indicators, all right? Indicators. So, if the enemy is pushing their air defense assets forward, that is an indicator, not necessarily, all right, it's going to happen, but it's an indicator that they intend to commit a attack, that they intend to move forward, because you don't want to move all your air defense forward and make it a target for the enemy artillery unless you plan on moving your forces forward and you need to have air defense over your forces. So you have these indicators of things. A date can be an indicator. 9/11, all right? So an indicator that September 11th, September 12th, all right, 2 significant days. 1683, Vienna's under siege. On September 11th, Sobieski, with at the head of 50,000 Polish cavalry, who had forced marched to Vienna to relieve Vienna at the head of the Holy League, all right, arrives. He arrives with his main force. On September 12th, they carry out the attack, which eliminates, basically pushes the Ottomans out of Western Europe and down through the Balkans again. Just lays them out. So it's very significant because that was the last time you had a caliphate. You didn't really have a big, all-encompassing caliphate for Islam after they...
I remember. I just have to comment. I remember that, but I want to, because it's kind of, it connects. My mother was born on September 12th, 1918, in Ansonia, Connecticut. I just have to make that comment. There you go.
So now you have an organization whose main goal is to reestablish a caliphate, and they attack on September 11th. The same day Sobieski, but that was over 300 and 2001, 318 years later. But that was a significant date. All right, that was probably Islam's greatest defeat ever. All right, and that and they were all unified back then under the Ottomans. They had all of North Africa. Before that they had been in Spain they've been in Spain.
The Moors of Spain, yeah.
Yeah. So to them, I would think that would be a significant date. And the dates become indicators of possibility. So when we're talking about now Waco, right, on April 19th, right, and the Oklahoma City bombing, next April, today, if anything happens today, well, someone should have seen that date as an indicator. Not necessarily going to happen, but it raises the threat level.
Okay, when you start talking about like pre-medieval times and you count the number of years times 365 days, there's a lot of stuff happening all the time. My opinion. I got a partner. He's called AI. I've been using him the last, 4 or 5 months, and I'm beating up on a lot of people with details, in my business, and I don't like it. I don't like the way the situation is. If I can make a comment about the trade war, but I realize we have to go through it. It's damning as far as...
Yeah, we got to go. Dennis,
all right,
thank you very much for calling in. We're going to commercial now for our wonderful sponsors.
Yeah. Thank you for the time. Bye now.
Bye, Dennis.
Exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tuman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tuman's webpage. It was a little scratchy if it's going through AM, because I live out there, but I put it on my car radio, all right? And I put it on the phone, goes through the Bluetooth, comes in great, fantastic. Our calling number is 847-931-1410, or you could text us at 505-926-1410. You could hit us up in the YouTube Live channel. I don't know why I haven't changed this printout. I keep saying Facebook Live. Facebook does have a live thing, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We could be streaming all over the internet soon. All right, so you could check out our Facebook page, Chief Guard of the Republic, or you could check out our webpage, cgr.silink, PSYLINK.net. Man, I couldn't believe when I was looking for a domain for the web server that I use, for my domain name, and I'm throwing everything in there. And my one of my emails is PSYOP Guru, because when we first set up some Hotmail accounts when email was kind of in its infancy, and we got this when we were over in Bosnia in 95, 96. All right, so I tried to get PsyGod, PSYGOD, because I was with Psychological Operations. It wasn't there. But I was teaching these kids all about psychological operations, so I just called myself the PSYOP Guru, and that was there. So that stuck, PSYOP Guru, because PsyGod was taken. I wonder who had PsyGod. I should start sending out some emails to them. But yeah, so that's the way that email came out. And I lost my train of thought yet again. Hey, Paul, you know, when I'm driving down here, I go down Irving Park Road now because literally it's like I get in my car, I make a a right. Yeah, I make a right onto Irving. Get my directions. I make a right onto Irving, and I just follow it till it ends. I make a left, I make a right, and boom, I'm at the radio station.
Really? You could take Irving all the way almost?
All the way. It's a little stop and go, but it's a pleasant drive. It really is.
Oh, I bet.
It's not that bad. They have this American Train and Hobby Supply store.
Is that up in Schaumburg or something?
Yeah, it's around Schaumburg. Have you been there?
I think I know the guy that runs it. He used to run another one. I think his name's Anthony. I know him from the train shows when I used to go with my dad.
Yeah, next time you come up to the studio here, we should go over and check it out after the show.
That'd be cool.
What's the place called?
American Trainers. Oh, wait, hold on. Look at. Oh, great! I lost something. I had something in here from Calvin. Let me see. Menu, no. So, yeah, so I'm at a veterans event for the VACCC. I wonder if Kane County, if anyone from the Veterans Assistance Commission of Kane County wants to call in and let me know, because I'm a delegate, alternate delegate to the Veterans Assistance Commission of Cook County, the VACCC. And I was at a meeting there, and one of the guys that's at the meeting, he looks at me, and I didn't have the beard back. I had the beard back then, but when I knew him, I didn't have the beard. And he looked familiar. I looked familiar, and I says, "Hey, what units were you with?" He says he was with the Guard, and then it hit us. We both went with the Illinois National Guard over to Poland to do the pilgrimage. And the pilgrimage goes from Warsaw to Częstochowa. It's like 300 miles, and you do it in 9 days. And so it was probably one of the best times I had in the Guard. All the nonsense I went through in the Illinois National Guard, that pretty much paid up for everything. That was such a great time. And so I find this guy, and it's like a small world again, because, Chicago's big, Illinois is big. And I says, he works with a veterans group, to help assist veterans. And I says, "Hey, Calvin, maybe you should you come on the show." Now, I need to be more proactive and recontact him on Facebook or the emails and set up a time for him to come in and be on our show, because he'd be more than willing to do it. Even though
that was America's Best Toys and Train Shop, right?
Yes.
America's Best Train, Toy, and Hobby Shop.
Yeah, we go over there. Maybe we shake him down. He could be a sponsor.
That's right.
Hey, any of you businesses out there, anybody wants to sponsor me, I'll make up commercials for you, or you can make up your own commercials, and I'll definitely name you on the show here, much like I name the good people over at the Blue Box Cafe. Now, today being Holy Saturday, all right, it's really a day of abstinence. So I fasted on Good Friday, so I'm not really. I ate a big breakfast, but I'm going to kind of lay off until after Easter Mass tonight, pre-Easter Mass. But yeah, so I couldn't have my sandwich, or I chose not to have my sandwich, but I did have some wonderful coffee and decaf. And they make it fresh, and I need to get decaf because my blood pressure can't handle too much of the regular stuff anymore. All right, so give me another war story, Paul.
Yeah, I have the distinction, I think, of being responsible for putting a guy in prison for stealing what you'd call refuse or garbage. Okay, so it was a friend of mine. He died tragically in a accident about 2 years ago. He ran the narcotics unit. His name is a famous musician, John Casdy, and he was in the Effigies, and his brother was in the Naked Ray Gun. They're famous musicians. But John was the head of our narcotics unit, and he had these two people working for him, Christina and Greg, and they were looking to do some cases, and they met with some police out west, I guess, and there was an involvement of the Cook County Sheriff, and they noticed in an investigation that there were these guys, and they were stealing used cooking oil. And that's actually a big thing because they do biodiesel out of it.
See, now that's not refuse. They put it in these refuse bins, but it's not refuse because they contract with over on 47th Street in the back of the yards. My buddies, remember Steve?
Yeah.
Steve Ambrose. His stepfather used to work for him. All right. So they drive these trucks, and they would collect all the dumped oil and everything, and they would bring it to the plant, and that plant would convert it to animal feed.
Well, now they bring it up to Wisconsin, and they make clean diesel for cars and stuff. So they were following these guys, and the problem was the Cook County got onto it, and they tracked them up to Will County and DuPage. Okay, so no one knew what to do with it, and they said, I said I might be interested in that, and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, they had tracked them to White Fence Farm. Okay. And at White Fence Farm, their refuse thing is inside. So they put a hose in there in the pipe and got, so burglary. To me, that was a burglary. Okay. So anyway, we did the case, and we charged the guys, and and there was a big outfit out of New York, the industry, and they were trying to push these prosecutions. Well, anyway, they were only getting misdemeanors out of it, and I was lucky enough with the burglary and stuff like that. I got the only felony conviction and felony imprisonment for stealing, basically motor oil, that was left out to be picked up. So I kind of enjoy that because that's a lot of fun for me.
So, yeah, some of these cases, these guys are making money and everything. And the thing is that how many times they weren't caught, So you catch them once and they go, oh, it ain't. But you know what? They got away with it for so long. You prove so much with their following them, but before that, they developed such a pattern to become under the thing of the police. Over the years, how much had they made? So a case like that I had, no crap, there I was. I won't use the S word, but in the military, if you don't say that first, then it means it didn't happen. It's just made up stuff, right? So you got to start it out with no crap, there I was. And I get one of these cases, telephone harassment cases. And the first, people don't like getting called. First thing I tell them is change your number. If these people are harassing you, change your, I can't do that. It's my business number. It's everything else. I could start to understand that now because your phone number is associated with like everything that you log into, right? And it's no longer a hard line. It's a cell phone and everything. You can still block, but people will come up with 1,000 Google numbers and just keep calling you, all right? So it's a big domestic problem. But the first offense is a petty offense. So you have to literally write them a ticket, a non-traffic city ordinance ticket, and mail it to them. Certified mail, the whole 9 yards, right? And you got to go down to the county and get a docket number for that. And so it's a big pain in the butt. It's really so. The second one, if they're convicted of the first one, which is just a petty offense by fine only, the second one is a misdemeanor, Class A misdemeanor. So they go up to a year in jail. The third one is a Class A misdemeanor. You go up to a year in jail. The fourth, if you've been convicted 3 times now, and think of how much it takes to get that all done, right? How many years and how bad you got to do this. The fourth one is a felony, all right? So I get this case, and I read the victim's name on it, and I'm like, oh, this is probably going to be pretty important, you know? This might have, so I take the case, right? And I run this guy, and yeah, he's got 3 convictions. It's there. This is a felony case now. I call him up on the phone. It's listed as him using, right, from a police phone, right? It's a police number. If he's got caller ID, this is back before, it wasn't a cell phone. It was a hard line. And I go, sir, is this your name? Yeah. He goes, yeah. Is this your phone number? He goes, yeah. Where's this phone located? Is it in your home? He's like, yeah, it's in my home. I go, are you home now? He goes, yeah. So I go out and I get him. I knock on the door. He comes out. I lock him up. I bring him in. I says, who else has access to the phone? He goes, oh, nobody. Who else lives with you? Nobody. I go, I don't need a confession. I got an admission, right? And he's the only one that ever uses this phone. So I got the admission from him. His phone number registered to him. I got the victim on the thing, and I called the state's attorney for felony review because they're not going to come out. It's just a phone call job. And I go, yeah, I faxed you the report like you wanted and everything. I want felony approval on the case. He goes, no. I go, what do you mean? Have you looked at the victim? He says, I don't care. It's just telephone harassment. I'm not charging anyone with felony over that. I go, oh, okay. Well, what's your name? He gives me the name and the time. Put it in. Refusal of felony charges. Take it down to the watch commander. Have the guy released without charging. Because I already locked him up. Because misdemeanor, felony. I'm not going to charge him with another misdemeanor. But the next day, the state's attorney's calling me, telling me, go lock him up again. I says, oh, did you read the victim? Dick Devine, the state's attorney, the actual state's attorney, and one of his assistants refused felony charges on that. I says, yeah, how's it going to look when it goes to court that you said there wasn't enough for a felony? No, I'm not going to go charge him with a misdemeanor. Go out and get him yourself. So that was like, you do all that work and everything, and then they just.
Well, I got a similar one. I'm not going to mention it, but you may have mentioned it. It was the state's attorney, and one of his family members was the victim of a identity theft. Okay.
Okay.
And it was a guy that was like dumpster diving, and then he was taking the information, and he'd have a catalog, and he'd go to the neighborhood, and he'd ask the women in the neighborhood what they wanted out of the catalog, and then they'd pay him cash, much less, and then he'd use the credit card of the state's attorney's relative and order it, So anyway, so we got the information, and I believe it was one of the major credit cards, like maybe the one that sounds like part of the country, but not maybe. So I got a hold of their, fraud division. I said, hey, I've got a case where the state's attorney's relative is the victim on one of your credit cards. And I said, we're prosecuting the person. And you know what the credit card company said?
What?
They said, no. They said, we're not agreeing to that. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, if you get money back, we'd have to amend our corporate return to disclose that, and we have no interest in doing that. So I promptly said to him, I says, well, I don't give so-and-so. I said, I'm going to prosecute him. And I said, I'm getting the money back, and I'm sending it to you. I said, I don't care if you rip it up, burn it up, or use it as toilet paper, but you're getting the check, okay? And so that was part of the deal. I made the defendant pay the money in a certified check, and I sent it on to the credit card company. And to this day, I don't even think that they cashed the check. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes, and I said, do you understand? It is the state's attorney's relative. It's my boss. I said, so I have to do this. And they said, we don't care. You know, we don't want to get involved. We never take money back, they told me. They said, because we write it off. We'd rather not amend our return.
Yeah.
I said, well, too bad.
So, that affects stuff too, because, now it becomes, they encourage these people. So one of the worst ones that I had, and this, I really got upset. I got dumped a baby abandonment case. They abandoned a baby right before Christmas. All right.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't identify the baby in the clothes, but the baby was wearing clothes given by the hospital. I won't mention the hospital, Illinois something or other, but so I know I have a confidential source that calls me up confidentially and tells me our hospital was given away, because I put out a blast to the press of what the clothing the child was wearing, pictures of the clothing. Our hospital was giving away those little socks. I'm like, got the hospital hat on it, got the hospital cheap blanket, right? The hospital onesie and those little socks. So now I go to the hospital and I want to talk to the people in the maternity ward and everything, and they're stonewalling me. They're absolutely stonewalling me. I'm like, I pretty much know the baby was born here now, right? And I want, the information from the mother. They give me the mother's form, nothing medical on it, right? But she gives a non-existent address, all right, when she checked in. So I know one thing, that the hospital social workers didn't tell this lady that she could have just left her baby at the hospital. All right. So I said, I need these medical records on the child. I need all the records you got on the child, because I got to locate this lady, because the child might be sick or whatever, or she might, whatever, Need to identify the child. And they stonewall me, kind of rude, and they have me call their lawyer. So I call up their lawyer, right? And he tells me to pound sand, get a warrant. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just trying to identify a baby, right? Okay, whatever. You don't care about the baby. So I go and I get a warrant, search warrant. And my mistake was that being in plain clothes, you have to call all these agencies, and then you have to bring a uniform with you when you serve these warrants, so they really know you're the police. So I do what I believe is the right and polite thing, and I faxed the warrant to this lawyer, and I says, I want this stuff ready to go at 8:00, originals. The warrant says originals, because I copied a financial crime thing, and I replaced everything with medical records, right? And the judge signs off this warrant. So the lawyer gets it, and he calls me up and he says, why didn't you just get a subpoena? I says, because you wouldn't act on a subpoena. You would wait, you would quash it, whatever. This is a search warrant. I'm going to be out there tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with the paddy wagon. We're going to fill it up with the paperwork. I'm going to take it, all originals. You've got plenty of time to make copies. And if you don't have them, I'm going to rip out your computers, because the search warrant says that too, right? Oh, guess who went to law school with my lieutenant? I come in the next day, and the sergeant tells me, lieutenant said quash the warrant. Don't serve that warrant. I'm like, what? Yeah, that's a direct order. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to do my job here. People treated me like crap, I'm not demanding anything. He told me get a warrant, I got a warrant, right? This is extra work that I'm going through to try to identify an abandoned baby, right? That's all. Not my baby. That I knew was born in this hospital, that they didn't tell the mother she could leave it there, so they're covering their butts by treating me like crap. Again, do your job and you're at fault. So I handed the whole file to the sergeant and I says, reassign this to the lieutenant. I had to go down and quash the warrant. I don't even know what happened with that case. But yeah, relationships with bosses that, you know, you think the guy would have just said, hey, you know, yeah, you're doing your job. You're doing a good thing here. Let me give you an information. Because what was I going to do? Was I going to do Law and Order SVU and lock up the nurse for not telling the mother? Would I have locked up the mother for abandoning the child? I would have probably locked her up to fingerprint her in case, you know, the doctor needed to talk to her about the child or something. That was it. Those are really soul-sucking cases. You know? I never had the attitude like, you know, who cares? You know, it's no longer good guys against bad guys. It's you against the good guys and bad guys. They put you off to the side as these people that don't fit in. Apparently, we fit in both categories at the same time.
You're fighting two fronts, the bad guys and your guys, all at the same time.
Okay, so next week, I am not going to be here. I will be at Schiller Park at the parade for the Little League, but Paul will be here with one of our original co-hosts, Marla, right?
Correct.
So tune in next week for information from one of the smartest people I know, Marla.
That's true. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Paul.